It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
We're going on. It's Barnet Bain and Freeman Michaels. We're going on. I think this is Barnet Bain.
I don't know who it is.
It was
today.
when I looked in the mirror this morning.
Today, I'll be playing the role of Freeman Michaels, and you'll be playing the role of
Barnet Bain. We should switch it up sometimes.
We should.
I thought we did. I got a little confused. It's our new music that just gets me off on a totally different foot.
Yeah.
You know. And then I heard something about Ed Ames from our able, erstwhile, and quick-witted, try to remember Spence on the board.
Engineer.
Ed Ames, and I thought, yeah, it does have a little Ed Amesy quality, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's nice.
Whoever Ed Ames is.
Well, it's all right. Ed's a good guy.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about today? Because we've completely reshuffled.
I have an idea. We reshuffled in the last
We should
minute.
probably tell folks why we're trying to come up with the topic for today. I guess we could stay with the topic we had.
I think we should stay with whatever it was. I'm not sure what the topic was. But we should share that we had a really great guest for you folks. We had a really, really great guest.
Canceled about an hour ago.
An hour ago, tragically, a death in the family, and but we went through some interesting responses to that.
Always.
All kinds of things. So maybe we could dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
What happens when life throws you a ringer? Is it a ringer that life throws? It's not a ringer, is it? A wrinkle.
A wrinkle.
Is it a wrinkle or?
Yeah, no, the ringer is the guy that comes in and saves the day. That's the ringer.
That's supposed to be us.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be the ringers.
He's a ringer.
We're the ringers
I think it
here.
comes from, the origin of words is very interesting. I think it comes from the guy at the fair who can take the hammer and make the bell ring. He's a ringer.
Really? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not the guy at the fair who can throw the little hoop over the milk bottle.
that's a different.
That's the milker.
Yeah, that's the milk ring thrower guy.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the. You know that never look a gift horse in the mouth. What that's about?
That comes from that horse at the fair that.
No. It has to do with the way you check if a horse is healthy is you look at its gums. So the idea is you never look a gift horse in the mouth. You never.
Unless
Unless you didn't really want the horse in the first place.
you know. Unless you've never owned a horse. If you've owned a horse, you know that you never even accept a horse, a gift horse, because that's a license to
That's a lot of work.
burn money.
It is. So what happened for you when you heard? You got a
Well,
message
I got
the
an
assistant.
email
Yeah.
from an assistant, and then I got a very curt email from our guest, and lots and lots of emotions come up simultaneously. First is, I'm not going to say in what order they come up with. I'm going to spare myself the indignity of being that self-revealing. So in no particular order, what comes up is
That's good.
what comes up is anger.
Yeah.
Then what comes up is some empathy and some compassion and feelings of sadness, and also some feelings of, oh my God, we're on the air in an hour and a half, and then some feelings of skepticism. Then some feelings of some righteous indignation came up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say in what order, folks. I repeat.
Right.
Some righteous indignation, and there's that whole part of me that's a film producer, and the show must go on, and all this kind of BS.
Oh, and did you do the Don't You Know Who I Am?
No,
Doesn't he know who I am?
I didn't do that one.
Oh, good.
Because he's bigger.
He's bigger than I am.
Because he's much bigger.
Oh, that's
So
hysterical.
I didn't. But I did do the reverse of that.
So-
I probably did the part where just because you're so big,
Yeah.
am I that small?
Yeah.
So that all comes up. There's a lot of unflattering. Oh, the phone's ringing. I wonder if that's him. It's not.
We could have had him back. That would be really awkward to then bring him on the show now. That would
We'd have to
really
bring him
uncomfortable.
under an assumed identity.
That's right.
Who do we know that's even bigger?
That's right.
So, so all of these things come up So I think you just kicked the our very fine in studio.
It'll be okay.
Apparatus.
You shook for a moment.
I did shake. I trembled. I trembled. Right. So
artificial.
These
tremble.
all come up simultaneously almost.
Yeah.
And then it's very challenging to simply watch them and feel them. First of all, many of them I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel the creepy ones. I don't want to feel the sort of the ones where I feel like a jerk, and and then I realize, wow, I've been socialized. I've so had my structured imagining formed and shaped so that I can't even honor a feeling without making a story about it and without wanting to push it away.
Yeah.
So I turned it into a discipline. I'm going to really allow myself to feel these things. The compassionate, nice guy one, which I'm much more comfortable with because I was told it's okay.
Yeah.
And the ones where I'm annoyed and put out, and all the kinds of quote-unquote shallow ones. And they're only feelings.
Right.
I keep reminding myself as I'm looking in the mirror and saying, Freeman, they're only...
Well, so there's a couple things going on. There are feelings, but there's also all these stories, right? There's all these pieces of us that come.
The stories
bouncing
keep
along.
the feelings. Either they keep them away,
Right.
or they bring the ones that we're socialized to accept. They bring them close. But the stories interfere with the more real experience of the pure energy in my body moving through.
So that distinction is really critical because the storylines, these threads that I can follow when something in me gets pricked. And, I have this experience as well. This is partly why I use the language part of me. Part of me feels this way, part of me feels this way, part of me feels this way. And so every one of those, parts of you, the part of you that's disappointed, the part of you that's mad, the part of you that feels like, hey, I'm not big enough and this guy's a big guy or whatever. All those parts of us, we contain all of them. And I'm not going to track back to this and spend much time on it because we've really, I feel, covered it on the show a lot. But my ability to be with those parts of me and what you were saying, allow the feelings to come up. And we've talked about dynamic complexity, that the feelings are dynamic and that they're complex. And there's layers and layers of feelings. And there's layers and layers of storyline. And my consciousness, as it expands, to be able to hold all of it. So I am not at the effect of a particular storyline where I don't have an observer and I'm compelled to follow it to a conclusion or to an outcome or to what we've come up with, which is recognizing as we follow it, we're making it more and more real. And it's becoming more and more real because our world around us is confirming more and more. That's the way the world works. So if we, let's say, go down the path of, who am I and I'm not big and that guy's big and this is what happens when you get big and we just start running down that path and then our world starts confirming that's true and then we'd say we're living in that, I call it the hell of our own creation. You've talked about this.
Well,
go ahead.
We are tracking back a little bit to the bus conversation.
We can. That's part of the conversation. I don't want to spend the whole time on it, but I just want to note it.
We can, but it's great to note it. But the cutting edge here,
right,
is what is the virgin territory? And the virgin territory is we remove ourselves from an experience by making a narrative about it.
Yeah.
And largely even, hey, listen, we're two guys on the radio. We show up to talk on the radio, so it's hard to say we remove ourselves from the experience by talking about it on the radio, but to a certain extent we do.
Yeah.
So what would it look like on the radio to really drop into the experience of being as close and familiar with some of those emotions as possible as I can be, without explaining it to the part of me that wants to be in control of stuff. I guess this is what it looks like on the radio. It's confusing.
Yeah.
And it's unfamiliar, and it feels unsafe and vulnerable. It feels very open to, there's like a fight or flight thing that's going on in my body. And a lot of awkward feelings that are in my body. There's sort of hollowness in the back of my chest and a sense of being small. Or I remember these kinds of feelings when I was very little. So that's all. Now, what does that all add up to? I don't know, but I want to personally resist.
I understand.
Roping all that in
Yeah.
to a narrative that I can feel complacent around.
Right.
Now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I
So-
can move on because now I'm back on I've either brought it back to the reservation or have extended the reservation.
Yeah, part of me wants to draw a conclusion right now. Part of me wants to commit to a story that makes me feel better about myself versus
I'm angry at our guest
Yeah.
who stood us up.
part of me.
At the
part,
last,
part of me is angry at our guest. Part of me is...
I'm not going for the part of me part.
Okay, all right.
Because the moment I go for the part of me part, I am not fully committed.
That's a good thing. I wouldn't commit to a single storyline here. I wouldn't
Well, that's
commit.
a storyline.
So for me, I think, allowing it all to be present and all to be floating up and to navigate it with a sense of...
So I'm going to pull back. I'm going
right.
to push back on this.
All right, go for it.
I understand the part of me language because we invented it on the show together.
Yeah.
And I also see that the moment that I do part of me, I am not fully present with what's going on. So what's going on is I want to be lost. I want to be completely in the experience of I'm confused. I feel confused. I feel compassion. I feel anger. I feel uncomfortable in my body as I even say these things on the radio. I feel a lot of, there's a lot of things that I can't even put words to. And later I will be able to say, oh, they're all parts of me. But right now,
Yeah.
I only want to experience the complicated messiness
Yeah.
of being as fully here as I possibly can
Yeah.
without watching it too closely. And even as I say that, I'm back into the
Yeah,
watching.
yeah. No, I totally...
You got to put it out there before you can bring it back in and integrate it. It becomes part of me after the fact.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'll tell you there's another version of what you're talking about where part of me, for me, saying part of me gives me permission to really feel it because I don't want to get lost in a particular interpretation. I like backing off of it a little bit so that I have permission to go into it without it feeling like it's going to consume me. Look, I have run down the road of disappointment. I have run down the road of hurt to where it feels like I've gone too far with it, and it's become, and I've built too much. The storyline, I've played out the storyline, and my world starts to reflect that, and it can get pretty dark when I run down that. So for
what
me,
you're saying is,
Yeah.
let me see if I understand you.
Yeah,
What you're saying is, I have run down some very dark alleys.
yeah,
And so when certain experiences come up, I will control that so that I don't have to run down those alleys. So the very act of what you're controlling is keeping it in place. Now,
Yeah, that's
there is a
interesting.
paradox. That only becomes true
right.
when it starts to be a strategy. And then you feel it, and it dissipates. But there's that thing that we joke about on this show in the past. No, you never forget where you buried the hatchet.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as I am watching myself, I'm remembering where I buried the hatchet.
Yeah,
So the exercise today around our guest, and if he's listening, with my sincerest intent is not to be provocative or insensitive, and I know you know me well enough to know that is true. I was looking for what is the mirror here.
yeah,
What can I learn that will allow me to show up more fully in my life and for others? So the part of me that plays it safe by having one foot on the reservation is not, well, it got me here. It's not going to get me any further. I now am willing to trust enough to lift my foot off the reservation and commit. The part that says, well, it's going to be a dark alley. It doesn't have to be, but as long as I am holding it as there are parts of me, then I'm in control. I want to be swept off by the more of me, not anchored to a fear and protection part.
Yeah, I hear you. And what I want to say about that is your intention to show up more fully for yourself and others is big enough to hold all of the parts of you, all of the fragments. I heard everything you said, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Mm-hmm. It can become very strategic to flip into the part of me language, and it can become a whole way that it takes on a life of its own that undermines the intention, which is to show up more fully for myself and others. So I do think that all of these techniques, and you and I know many of them, we've been through enough workshops and run enough workshops ourselves to go, at what point is it a technique? And the technique, for all of the payoff that it gives us initially, when it becomes a way of opening to that intention, show up more fully for myself and others, at what point does it top out and just become a technique? And now it's organized back around a strategy to manipulate, control, and so forth.
That's well said. At what point is it my way of playing it safe?
That's it. So, but I don't want to diminish how valuable it can be to go through the process of saying, okay, it's just part of me. I don't have to fully commit to this. And then I can experience it in a way that allows me other options. So I'm not stuck in that interpretation. Look, from an unconscious perspective, when I get caught in an interpretation and I start getting people to collude with me and building my story, and that's my reality. I've done this in a very destructive way. I can think of like my first wife and the divorce and the whole thing. I don't know what part of that was required. Some part of me just thinks that, look, I caught a bunch of disappointments. I was an actor at the time, and I hit some bumpy patches, and she hit some bumpy patches, and we made up stories, and we made it about each other, and we had no skill set to observe that, and we went running down the storyline.
But you already have deep, deep wisdom. As many of our listeners do, there's a deep wisdom that we experience and that it gets modeled and that we recognize. I recognize it in you because you have an ability to understand that you are made of many intelligences.
Right.
And that you have the ability to respond to them all. And that you're able to integrate very quickly. And so that once upon a time took many, many years to develop that awareness is now it's an instantaneous thing. So from that place of needing to process, many of us no longer need to process.
I agree with you. It
becomes the last workshop.
Right. We talked about that
Let's not keep trailing back to who's on the bus and who's in the back and the many parts. And it's all there, but I don't trail back to my sandbox days unless I get triggered by a buddy who calls me up first thing in the morning and says, I'm not going to be on your show in an hour.
Right.
Now I'm in the sandbox. I'm throwing my toys down. But it doesn't require a lot of language for me to get what's going on.
Yes. No, I agree with you.
Instant.
I agree with you.
Now the cutting edge is not where I have been anymore.
Right.
It's where am I going more accurately informs who I am now. The present is the result of the future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Not the past. We can make it about the past.
Right.
And we can have an anchor out there. I can anchor it about, I'm having cash flow issues, for example, which is real. I can make it all about a whole bunch of history, and I do. And I can also put the clutch in on that and say, well, where am I going? Where am I going is more important to me than where I've been.
I am more committed to who I'm becoming than who I've been. And with that, we need to take a commercial break. We'll come right back.
We will be coming right back.
So stay with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.